Hello, Kingston Town Administrator Keith Hickey with the latest edition of This Week in Kingston. This week we're going to do an extended TV show today to start reintroducing Kingston residents to the proposal that'll be coming forward at the fall town meeting for MBTA zoning. Joining me today is Town Planner Valerie Massard, also Kingston's MBTA expert. We're going to try to run through some information to reintroduce the MBTA zoning that is going to be voted on in November, and also talk about the location, the impacts, and try to provide some background information for you. So when you get to the town meeting in November, you have as much information as you possibly could want to make an informed decision on whether or not you support MBTA zoning. So with that, Val, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you being here. What have you got for us?
Well, thanks, Keith. Thanks for having me. I've done a PowerPoint.
Great.
And I thought it would be helpful because it's a lot of information to take in. So if you don't mind, I thought I'd share some slides.
That'll be great.
Okay. So we're talking about MBTA communities, and I'm just going to cover what is MBTA, why are we doing this, who's working on it, which you've already touched on, and where are we in the process. And so the main question is, why is the state asking us to do this? And that is because there's that nationwide housing shortage that we're all talking about, where it's hard to afford housing and it's hard to find housing that's available on the market because the mortgage interest rates are high, the availability of housing is low, and in Massachusetts we're also fighting the weather. And so we're tending to have an aging demographic, meaning the population's getting a little bit older, the younger people are moving away, and new people that come in look at it and say, I'm not sure I want to invest that much money in repairing one of those New England houses. So we're losing some of the workforce when it comes to that. People are moving away and they're not coming in. So we're facing a problem where we need to have more available, newer housing to compete with the rest of the country and be a vibrant community. And Kingston follows those same demographics. We have an aging population. We have a much lower young population than we've had in previous decades. So this is a slide that demonstrates that. And the costs have been going up. The cost of a 5-bedroom house, which is unique, I guess, but went up 55% year over year. A 1-bedroom went up 67% year over year. And then we have things closer to 10% that are in between that 3- and 4-bedroom.
So to try to attract, the younger generation that have, recently graduated from college or are a few years out of college, a $700,000 to $800,000 house sometimes is out of reach, unattainable. Yeah. One of the things they're looking to try to do, I think, is to increase the inventory of houses on the market, have them be a little more affordable. And again, to your point, trying to keep people who are from the South Shore, who are graduating, to either come back to the South Shore after they graduate or stay here after they graduate, so we can continue to have a workforce that meets the needs of the organizations and the companies that that have been located on the South Shore. And right now, to your point, we're losing those to other areas of the country who have more affordable places to live and more attractive places to be if they don't want to be in the weather and things of that nature.
Yeah, so that's exactly it. And you'll hear Governor Healy talking about that. They recently passed some new housing legislation, new affordable laws have been passed, and accessory dwelling units. It's all along that same page of trying to create more housing. We have mostly single-family housing here in Kingston. So again, the idea of MBTA zoning is to have some kind of multifamily where you end up getting a little bit lower cost and starter homes, that kind of thing. When I talk about MBTA community, that's a little bit of a confusing term, so I thought I'd explain that that's part of the state law. It's a new zoning law, and it requires all the towns that have an MBTA station, like a bus stop or a train station, which we have, a commuter rail, or that touch one of those communities, to build, or not build, but zone for more multifamily housing. And for us, that means that we have to have a minimum size of 50 acres. We have to create about 805 units that could be zoned for that. And we have to make it as of right. No age restrictions, meaning that you can't say, well, it's only going to be over 55, that kind of thing.
If I could just interrupt real quick,
Sure.
and maybe I'm jumping ahead, so I apologize. I think it's important for people to realize, again, that you mentioned 805 living units is
Yeah.
what's required for Kingston, and that differs from town to town based on population and other factors.
Exactly.
That the state determined Kingston specifically needs 805 additional dwelling units. What I think is important is we need to identify the 50 acres. I think we've done that, but the 805 units don't have to be built. They don't even have to be able to be built. They just the area for where these 805 units could be built has to be identified and zoned as MBTA zoning. So as Val gets into her presentation, we'll talk about the location of the 50 acres that have been identified. And I think what you'll notice, and I think it's important for people to recognize, is the majority of that acreage has already been developed.
Yeah.
And it already has, retail / commercial usage on it. So we don't expect, I don't think, 805 units to start popping up.
We don't.
Over the next, couple of years if the zoning were to be approved. So again, we've got I think what we're trying to do and what we've been tasked to do is identify a location in town, to be able to provide, in our case, 50 acres for 805 units. We've done that, but it's not 800, it's not 50 acres of undeveloped property that a developer can come in with, virgin land and decide to build up to 805 units.
We've been really careful to walk our way through that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, like you said. And I think it's really important to understand that the state is looking for a density of 15 units per acre, and when you look at the new apartment buildings that were built up by the Kingston Collection, for example, that's a density of like 28 units per acre. So we're looking at a lower density than that.
Great.
And just, again, the goal of the law is that it has to be built for us within the half mile of the train station. So that gives us kind of a limited area to work with in terms of, okay, we have only one way to get to the train station, and we have some existing infrastructure. So we wanted to try to tackle this in a way that was controlled and meaningful for the town. So we're heading for a fall town meeting, as you said. And we have money at risk if we don't adopt it. We have $6 million that we've gotten from the state for the water and sewer infrastructure that we're working on. We have $500,000 that we've gotten recently for land acquisitions. We just got that grant award for over $1 million for the MVP program, and another $50,000 or so for brownfield redevelopment funds. All of those funds would no longer be available to us if we don't adopt the zoning.
I think it's important for people to recognize that when the state adopted this legislation for MBTA zoning, there was a punitive piece of that.
Yeah.
At least in my mind. If MBTA zoning is not approved in this case in Kingston, having a rail station in town, the town of Kingston would no longer be eligible for a variety of different grant opportunities that's provided through the state. And Val's mentioned, we've received literally millions of dollars in water, sewer grants. We recently received $1.3 million, I think, for the acquisition of a piece of property in town. Those revenue sources aren't available to us moving forward, and it shouldn't be a reason to vote yes or no on the MBTA zoning. What we're trying to make people aware of, I think, with this is it's a factor.
Yeah.
And we're just factually, one of the cons, if this zoning isn't approved, is we will no longer be able to be eligible for
Some grants.
And again, the water and sewer grants, the sewer department has recently or is recently finishing up their leaching field. They've done their wastewater expansion in the plant itself. So there may not be a lot of sewer grants that they're looking for in the near future. The water department, for example, has to build or construct, and they will be hoping to do that, I think, starting next spring when they bring a warrant article forward to town meeting, a new well, so we can expand the amount of water that can be produced and provided to water users. That may be eligible for some sort of a grant that we wouldn't be eligible for if this doesn't pass in November. So again, not trying to scare people by saying that we're not eligible for state grant money, but it's a factor, and we just want to make sure people make an informed decision and understand all the pros and cons when they go to town meeting and make the decision whether or not to support this zoning.
And I do have one more con, and that is there are a couple of towns that have said, no, we're not going to adopt this, and they're being sued by the Attorney General's office. And so there's a cost factor on top of the eligibility for grants that we just talked about. There's the legal fees and the fines that are being issued. Milton is one example of that.
That's interesting because, again, this isn't the only thing they've asked us to do as a community is vote up or down.
Yeah.
It's not a mandatory zoning
It doesn't have
requirement that it has to be voted in yet, and I'm not sure, frankly, why they've chosen two communities to litigate against. There have been several communities that have voted against MBTA zoning. I think about 75% of the communities that have had to vote or who have voted have approved the MBTA zoning in their community. So the lion's share of the communities have adopted it.
Yes.
The town of Plymouth has adopted it. For example, the town of Duxbury will be discussing and voting this fall, as will Kingston. So there are a number of communities around us that have voted for it. Some have voted against it. I think Marshfield voted against it for their own reasons. In my mind, again, we're trying to provide you with factual information to allow you to make an informed decision. And Val's done a great job at identifying the location and having what I think will be a minimal impact on infrastructure because the property is already in use in some other commercial manner. Yeah. So you won't be seeing 800 units go up immediately, if ever. And we have the infrastructure and town infrastructure in place: water, sewer, roads, and things of that nature that helps minimize the impact if some of these 800 units get developed.
Exactly. And we've worked really hard at that angle of trying to make sure that we minimize the impacts. We appointed a task force, the implementation task force, which included a planning board, selectmen, conservation, water and sewer commission member. We got a grant, actually 2 grants from the state to help us with the planning. There's modeling that has to be done to make sure that the area that we pick meets the zoning requirements, and so we've submitted that information to the state to make sure that it tested out properly and when we got our 50 acres mapped out. And we also have done some original outreach a couple months ago, and like you said, it's been a long summer and it's time to kind of revisit this. And we developed some zoning language working with that same task force and VHB, our consultant. We worked hard on the site. Like you said, we have the access to the T right off exit 17. We wanted to try and capture the existing apartment buildings so that we get credit for those 282 units.
So before you jump off this slide, I think what you're showing is the actual MBTA zone.
No, but it actually, yes, it does kind of look like that.
Okay. Just to, I'm sure everybody's at their edge of the seat right now watching this riveting TV show wondering, where is this zone?
That blue outline that you see is actually the overlay district that was adopted for the mall to redevelop itself. So it's very similar. And then this is zooming out a little bit where you see the T station. And when we started looking at what can we do in that half-mile radius, we have leaching fields for the sewer. We have the elementary school, the actual wastewater treatment plant, the landfill. And then we're down to Smelt Pond. and the 40R overlay district, which isn't going to be constructed. That's something. So we started to really focus on the mall because we know that they're looking at redeveloping, and that's a site that we think would make sense for this type of development. And we approached the state and said, look, it's a little bit outside of the radius, but we really want to make sure that we're focusing on that because we know that it's going to be redeveloped. And they allowed us to get a waiver to put only 40% of those 50 acres within the half mile and allow us to use a lot of that mall land to meet the requirements. What's great about it is we get to include the apartments we've already built. We're not including Macy's or Target, so that we know that those will stay where they are. We want it to be a mall. We don't want it to be all apartments, you know. The zoning will not affect the existing projects that are already there. Like you said, there's a car dealership, there's some storage facilities, there's an awning company, and there's the mall. But we know the mall in particular is looking to redevelop. So we've been able to work with the mall and work with meeting with each of the property owners to talk to them about what we're doing, and there's no negative impacts.
No, and I think just to expand on the mall a little bit, if we could, you know, the mall, the new mall developers, new mall owners, you know, I think they've said to us that certainly a piece of how they project or anticipate redeveloping that property will have some sort of a residential aspect to it. But I think it's important to and try to reassure everybody who's watching that the mall owners have said very clearly, you know, they're not looking to either reuse the mall for housing
Right.
Extensively or tear the mall down and put up some sort of housing units on the property. They, like a lot of malls across the country, are being reinvigorated by having it become sort of a town with its own within a town. You know, they're looking to build, you know, living units. Obviously, there's some restaurants here already. They're looking at a variety of other aspects of ways to attract people to come to the mall, whether you live here or not. But if you do live on this property or on that property, excuse me. You know, you've got a Target where you've got food and grocery stores. You've got restaurants. You can pick up perishable items and household items. You know, in a perfect world, you never have to get in your car.
Yeah.
If you are able to work remotely and things of that nature. So I think what they're trying to do, and I think it's important to emphasize to people that they shouldn't be concerned that the mall owners are going to come in here and look to redevelop the mall property and build 805 units. That's just not going to happen. We expect, Val and I have talked about this, and you know, one of the things that we're looking to do with this informational show is to have 2 or 3 shows, not just this one. And we may have, it may make some sense to have a representative or 2 from the new ownership group of the mall come in and talk in very broad terms you know, what they're looking to do and how this MBTA zone really dovetails into the redevelopment of the property, and we can take advantage of the fact that they do want to see some additional additional residential units that can go towards the 805 required units that we have to provide as part of the MBTA zoning. So again, Val, I think, has done an amazing job at utilizing the resources available to us to make this MBTA zone as Kingston specific as it can be. We've asked for a waiver because of the mall and some of the attributes of the mall that were outside the allowable area. We've gotten that waiver because of Val's willingness to work through the process to get that. We've talked to, or she's talked to, you know, the mall owners. She has either spoken to or tried to speak to a number of businesses in that proposed MBTA zone to make them aware of what's happening and try to get them to understand, if they're interested in doing so, what it means to them as property owners within this MBTA zone. So we are going to, you know, we'll tape this TV show. I expect in a month or so we'll be back again with some additional, maybe more specific information about what's happening and what this means to Kingston. So again, gearing up to the November fall town meeting where You know, you walk into the town meeting and you aren't seeing some of this stuff for the first time. Hopefully, if you're interested in getting yourself up to speed on what's happening, that these shows will have done that for you. Sorry.
Yeah, well, no, and if you look back here, you can see in the dark red on this slide that was the mall overlay district that the town already adopted, and this district is actually smaller. And so we have been having good conversations with all of the business owners in the proposed district. So we're off to where we are is, you know, we've done the draft language. We brought that to the state back in July after bringing it through the planning board.
Planning board approved this and recommends this as the language to be brought forward to town meeting.
Exactly.
Pending state approval.
Right, and the state takes 90 days to review. All of this went up on July 1st, so we're actually going to hear from them hopefully before October 14th. They typically take all 90 days.
But we don't expect there to be significant material changes.
No, we don't. We know that we already have the shape of it has already been worked out. We've got a public hearing coming up on October 28th. We'll do more outreach.
Is that at a planning board meeting?
At a planning board meeting. And then fall town meeting coming up right before Thanksgiving.
So again, our thought is to try to get in front of everybody again and tape a TV show sometime around the first week of October, which will dovetail in with then having a public hearing at the planning board meeting in the middle of October, and then if it makes sense to do a third show before town meeting, we'll certainly do that as information becomes available. If somebody was interested in looking at the draft MBTA bylaw, where could they find that?
We're going to put it up on the website this week so that it's available to everyone if they want to pull it down and take a look.
So that information's out there. I'd urge anybody who wants to take a look at it to do that. If they have questions at all, you know, Val is very available. You know, shoot her an email, pick up the phone, stop in. You know, we want to answer those questions. We want to try to address the concerns if at all possible, and provide as much factual information as we can. It's the voters' decision. We aren't trying to have people. We're not trying to convince somebody one way or another on how to vote. It's up to everybody's decision. What we're trying to do is provide information in a very factual way, unbiased way, so people can at least take that information, walk into town meeting and know what they're voting on, and not have it be emotional, but have it be factual. And whatever works out, works out. But the hope we have is that if there's a question out there that we're aware of, we'll get it answered before town meeting, so you have time to consider what's being proposed at town meeting. So with that, Val, thanks very much. Again, you'll see us back in 3 or 4 weeks with more information, but the proposed article and the proposed zoning language is going to be on our website sometime, or so we'll say early next week. So the week of September 9th. Take a look at it. And again, if you have questions at all, we'd ask, please reach out. We'll try to get those answers back to you as quickly as we can, so you can make an informed decision when you attend the town meeting in November. So with that, I want to thank everybody very much for watching. We hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again in a few weeks. Thank you.